Hi all, my name's Ollie, this is Simply Stitchy, and in today's video we're going to be talking about vibrating shuttles, but in particular Singer's vibrating shuttles. Now Singer introduced the vibrating shuttle family of sewing machines way back in 1885, and he did so as an improved option to the Transverse shuttle. Now I don't have a Transverse shuttle sewing machine, but what I do have is this one. Now by transverse, what we mean is that the bobbin goes from side to side instead of, like in a vibrating shuttle, backwards and forwards. Just keep an eye on that bobbin for a minute and I'll show you what I mean. There you go, it went from side to side. The difference with a vibrating shuttle is, if we take a look at Grandma for a moment, is the shuttle goes from back to front, or front to back, depending on your perspective. When you think about vibrating shuttle machines, it's easy to think of the ones from the early 1900s or even from the late 1800s. But so popular was the Singer family of vibrating shuttle machines that they actually kept making them right up until the 1960s. You can get them in treadle options, hand crank options, and some were even made to be electric, although some of the earlier ones were converted to electric and would have started out as treadles or hand cranks. The reason behind the popularity and the reason why Singer made them for such a long time is because they were simple and easy to use and maintain. The vibrating shuttle story starts in 1885 when Singer introduced the prototype, the VS1, or Vibrating Shuttle 1. It was short-lived, and by 1887 it had been replaced by the VS2. Now both of these machines were full-size machines and normally found in treadles because obviously they were a bit heavy to carry. In 1888 Singer decided to do something about that, and they introduced a 3/4 size version and they called it the VS3. Not wishing to let the grass grow under their feet, in 1891 they yet again improved the vibrating shuttle and they introduced a new model to replace the VS2 and a new model to replace the VS3, and they called them the 27 and the 28. The 27 was the full-size machine and it replaced the VS2. The 28 was the 3/4 machine and it replaced the VS3. Now I'm not 100% sure why Singer changed their numbering system at around about that time. I do know is that this little guy was called the Singer 20 because it was Singer's 20th sewing machine. So I think that the new machine was called the 27 because it would have been the 27th machine in the Singer stable. Kind of makes sense. Once again, in around about 1912, Singer decided to upgrade the vibrating shuttle family. Only they hit a bit of a snag with the sequential numbering system. They already had a Singer 29 and they already had a Singer 30. So when you've run out of numbers, what do? You add a little 1. So the 27 became the 127 and the 28 became the 128. Identifying a vibrating shuttle machine is relatively simple. They all have slide plates that go from the back of the machine to the front. They all have a little circular cover over the feed dogs here. If you look slightly higher up on the machine, they have a little trapezoid inspection cover. They have flat faceplates which can either be embossed with a scrolled design or flat and smooth. They have long bobbin winders because obviously they use long bobbins. If you have a look at the bobbin for a moment, they all use the very familiar shuttle shaped bobbin casing. And there's the long bobbin. The backs of the machines are pretty similar too. They've all got inspection hatches on the back. Now they're not always embossed, they're not always silver, and they're not always the same shape, but they are always in the same place. This one has got a black inspection hatch. It's all very well knowing how to identify a vibrating shuttle, but how do you know which vibrating shuttle you've got? Have you got version 1 or have you got a 27? There is a way of telling the difference between the various different vibrating shuttle models, and I'm going to show you how. The VS1, the very first prototype, is actually a very basic sewing machine. It's also incredibly difficult to find one. But the sort of things that you're looking for is the placement of features on the actual machine. And the one that is an immediate giveaway is this one, your stitch length adjuster. Because on the version 1, it isn't on the pillar, it's on the bed. What you might also find with version 1 and the version 2 and even the version 3 is, unlike the 27s, they're more likely to have a fiddle base. Now, fiddle bases were popular before 1900, and it's basically a bed with a wave in it. It looks a bit like a violin, so that's why they call them fiddle bases. Another way that you can possibly identify if you've got an earlier vibrating shuttle model or a 27 is by looking at the treadle pedal. On later 27s they have a pedal that's big enough for 2 feet. The earlier models had a single foot pedal. Now obviously that's only helpful if the sewing machine that you've got is in its original table. If it's been swapped out at any point in the past, then that's not a guaranteed way of telling if you've got a version 1 or a 27, but it might give you an inkling. The stitching adjuster knob on the base though is a definite VS1. The other thing with VS1s in particular is, unlike the 27, they don't take standard class 15 needles. They take a different needle. A standard 15 isn't going to fit. When we come to the version 2, it's slightly more of a challenge to tell the two apart, but as with the version 1, the version 2, it came before 1900, so it's less likely to have a rectangle base. It's more likely to have a fiddle base. But bear in mind, with the version 2, that does take class 15 needles, so that's one of the ways that you'll be able to differentiate that from its earlier VS1. We've looked at the differences between the VS1, the VS2 and the 27, but what about the 27 and the 127? How do you know if yours is the original 27 or the updated 127? Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. There are a couple of differences between both machines. This is Great Aunt Bessie, and like Grandma, she is a 27. And how you can tell that is by a number of things. The first is the location of the bobbin winder. On the 27s, that is going to be at the base of the pillar. Another feature to look out for is this one right here. This is known as a thumb plate, and the thing that you need to remember with 27s is they don't have an automatic tension release. Now what I mean by that is, on most modern machines, when you lift the pressure foot, it takes the pressure off the tension discs. It just loosens them off a little bit. On this machine, it doesn't matter if your foot's up or down. That tension on your tension discs is going to stay constant. In order to release the tension on a 27, you have to push that thumb plate, and that will separate the tension discs and let the thread go through just that little bit easier. How that differs to the 127 is it does have an automatic tension release. So when you raise and lower the foot pedal, your tension discs here will move to release the pressure on the cotton. Another difference between the 27 and the 127 is in the bobbin area. This is definitely a 27 because if you have a look at the shuttle race, there isn't a bobbin release button. To get the bobbin out on this machine, you have to push down on the tip so that it kicks the back up and you can lift it out. On the 127, it's got a button that you can push and that lifts the bobbin out for you. So far we've been looking at the full-size machines and the differences between the VS1, the VS2 and the 27. But there's also a VS3 to consider. How do you know if your sewing machine is a VS3 or a 28? Well, the answer to that one's fairly simple. The VS3 was still in the 1880s, so it had a fiddle base. The 28s have rectangular bases like these two. Now the version 3 and the 28 were designed to be portable, so you're more likely to find them as hand cranks than you will treadles, although it isn't impossible. Now you could be forgiven for thinking that these two are exactly the same machine, but they're not. This one is a 28 and this one is a 128. You've met this one before, I've used it in a few videos already. The most recent was the hand cranks, the Ugly Truth, which I'll put a link to in the description box for you. Now you're probably wondering how I know that that's the 128 and this is the 28. The differences between these two are similar to the differences between the 27 and the 127. The placement of the bobbin winder on the 28 is usually at the base of the pillar. Note that I said usually there. I'll come back to that in a minute. If we check the bobbin area, this one's a little bit tricky to get into because it's had a bit of a bang. There isn't a bobbin release button in the bobbin area, so as with the 27 you have to push down on the point of the bobbin case to get the bobbin to come out. If we take a look at the 128, the bobbin winder is at the top of the pillar, and if we take a look in the bobbin area, it has a bobbin release button right there. 28, 128. If we take a look at this machine, you're probably thinking, judging by the bobbin winder, that this is a 128. Unfortunately, it isn't. It's a 28. The 28 is one of those machines that throw a bit of a googly at sewing machine collectors, and what that means is it can give you a bit of a bum steer. Although the earlier models of the 28, like the one we've just looked at, had a bobbin winding mechanism at the base of the pillar, the later ones moved it to the top of the pillar. In order to make sure that you have either a 128 or a 28, there are other factors that you need to bear in mind before you identify it as definitively a 128. There's two. They're exactly the same as the ones on the 127. So let's take a look at them again. The 128, exactly the same as the 127, has automatic tension release. Can you see the tension discs moving as I raise and lower the presser foot? And don't forget, the 128 has the bobbin release button This machine, although it has the high bobbin winder, has a thumb plate on the tension discs, which means it doesn't have an automatic tension release. Those tension discs don't move when I raise and lower the presser foot. And if we look at the bobbin area, there is no bobbin release button on that bobbin race. So this machine is a 28. Okay, as a little bit of fun, I've got another machine here. I'm not going to tell you what this one is. It's got a high bobbin winder. It's a 3/4 size machine. It's got a bobbin release button and automatic tension release. Let me know in the comments if you think this machine is a 28 or a 128. Now you're probably wondering that because all of these machines are incredibly similar, that the parts are interchangeable. Well, to a certain point they are, but it depends what you're trying to interchange the parts with. I mean, as I've said before, these little trapezoid inspection covers, they're pretty much universal across the board. So if you've got a spare one of those, it's probably going to fit any of the others. But there are some parts that don't. If we take a look at the slide plates off a 3/4 machine and compare them to the slide plate off a full-sized 27, you'll see that there's a little bit of a size difference. I'll bring that in closer so that you can see. They're level on the bottom, and you can just see there's just a little bit of a difference right at the top. So the 3/4 machine takes smaller slide plates, and that is something that you need to bear in mind when you're looking for parts online. Although these will fit a 27 and the 127, you'll need a smaller one for the 28 and the 128. Another thing that's different is the bobbins. Now you've heard me say before that when you're getting a sewing machine, an antique or a vintage sewing machine, make sure it's got the shuttle case and the long bobbin that goes in it with it, because that is going to save you a headache like no other. Because if you haven't got those parts, you are going to have to try and work out which ones fit your machine. And there are more than one. There are different sized shuttles, there are different sized bobbins. If we take a look at these two for a minute, this one with the holes in the back is out of a 128. This one with no holes in the back is out of Great Aunt Bessie, the Singer 27. The one from the 27 is just that little bit longer. It might only be, what, a millimetre, if that, but it is slightly longer. If you put a shuttle in your sewing machine that's too long, it's going to affect the way that it works. And if you put one in there that's too short, you're going to have the same problem. As a rule of thumb, you're more likely to find that parts for a 3/4 machine like a 28 or a 128 are interchangeable, and parts for full-size machines, the 27 or the 127, can be swapped out for each other. But it's not always the case. Whenever you're buying parts for vintage sewing machines or antique sewing machines like this, measure the part that you're trying to replace before you order a new one, and that way you'll be sure that the dimensions are the same. That's particularly important with the bobbins and the shuttle cases, because there are so many different variations out there. Always try and make sure that your sewing machine comes with the bobbin and the shuttle case in the first place, so you don't have to try and replace both. I'm going to put some links to some places where you can get parts online for vintage and antique vibrating shuttle machines. It'll be in the description box, along with some Amazon links to some replacement parts that you can buy for vibrating shuttle machines. They're Amazon links. I'm an Amazon affiliate. I do get a little bit of a referral fee if you use those links. There's no obligation to do so, and it doesn't cost you any extra other than the price of the item would. But it does help me, it supports this channel, and I appreciate it if you do use the links. But again, before you buy anything off Amazon, make sure the dimensions of those items match what you need for your machine, because not all machines are the same. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and why not consider checking out some of the other videos on my channel using either these links coming up any minute now, or the ones I'll pop in the description box for you. And why not subscribe to my channel and click that little bell down there so that YouTube can give you a notification when I upload another video. Whatever video you go and check out next, I hope to see you back here for the next one. And in the meantime, whatever you're sewing it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.